My name is Alex Bryce. I work for Pilz Automation and I've been involved in machinery safety for over 30 years now. So I've seen many changes to the various regulations, standards, product solutions, applications and that sort of thing over those years. So what I want to do today is to whiz through, and it will be a whiz through because we only have a 20-minute period, but to whiz through some of the recent changes that have been developed and introduced into machine safety. So in essence, if I get the slides to work, so we're going to look at the machinery regulation, which is the new version of what was previously the CE marking Bible, if you will, as the Machinery Directive. There'll be a little bit of an update on 13849, which is a standard we use for safety-related control systems. Small section on 14119, which is all about interlocking. And then we'll finish off with a very little quick look at 14200, which looks at maintenance of machinery. Now, as I said, this is going to be a fly-through. We do have a stall out there, so you can come and talk to us and get any more information at any point. But we'll start with the machinery regulation. As I said, this is something that replaces the well-known Machinery Directive that was brought in 1995. That was the key directive that we use for CE marking of machinery. Now, there are around about 800 standards that are certified under that give us that presumption of conformity that we've got within there, but it was getting a bit outdated, the last version being the 2006 release. So there is an update. Why do we have it? Basically to take into account of the safety requirements and things that we've got, security, which is a very big issue that's a real add-in to the regulation from what we've had before, and technological advancements, things like Industry 4.0 and that sort of stuff. So there's going to be quite a bit of things that change and things to get used to. This is the timeline. So it was originally brought in 2023. We're right down here now. So there's only one last little bit left in 2026, which is going to be just finalising penalties and things like that and everything that's there. But the regulation itself becomes fully mandatory and enforceable as of 20th of January 2027. Don't ask me why it's not the 1st of January. Don't know, it's the 20th for some reason or other. So as of then, the machinery regulation will take complete precedence over the existing Machinery Directive. It's in force now, you can use it now, it's launched in 2023 as I've said. And there are quite a few things that's in there. One of the things is that it's called a machinery regulation. And the reason behind that is the directives can be translated and then adopted as regulations in the EU member states. And I know I'm talking about EU and we're not in the EU, but I will mention that in a little bit. So there can be differences in translation and loss of interpretation and things like that, which is why country X might make a machine slightly different to country Y. Hopefully now, with this being a regulation, they can lift it verbatim and just implement it into their respective law. So that's the reason it's a regulation. For those that are familiar with the old Machinery Directive, you'll be familiar with things like Annex 4 machinery, big dangerous bits of kit that you can't self-certify. That's now in Annex 1. And there's a bit of a shuffle around and things like that. Annex 1 as was, which was the essential health and safety requirements, which is what we've all got to apply and ensure that we meet, is now Annex 3. So there's been a little bit of shuffling around, but not a massive amount of difference really. I will go into detail a bit more on some of these here, but we have things like new terminology, clarifications, new technologies. It talks about machines with self-learning capabilities and things like that. Doesn't mention the phrase artificial intelligence. Okay, but that is in essence what it's inferring. Digital instructions, safety is now, software, is now considered as a component. And the bit in the middle, the little security becomes mandatory. That is a massive key part that I'll talk a little bit about when we move through that's in there. And as I say, some of the bits have jumbled around. And the bit at the bottom, there's the inclusion now of what's classed as a substantial modification. So if you change a machine, you do something to it, does that mean that you need to recertify it? So there's a much more guidance and clarification given in the new standard for that. So, safety component, as I said, we've now added software. It was always known as an e-stop button or a light curtain or a guard switch or something like that. So it's not just physical, it's now seen as software because more and more systems are being installed as a programmable system. Substantial modification I mentioned. The key thing here is to look at it and decide, are you introducing a new risk? If it's a new risk, do your existing control measures adequately cover the hazards that is associated with that risk? If they do, then happy days. Just do a little risk assessment, document it, and you're all right. If not, then you potentially will need to look at recertifying that machine. Okay. So there's a bit more of a fuller definition of things within the standard itself, but in essence that's what it means. So if you don't bring any new hazards, your existing concept meets the requirements, and even if safety is increased, that's fine. So you add in extra functionality and things like that, that's not seen as a substantial modification. Okay. There are things with high-risk machinery. What was Annex 4, there's now split into two parts. First part is this phrase, self-learning mechanisms. That's in there. There is a list, I'm not going to bore you by going through it, but there is a list of 6 different categories of machinery and things like that that's in there that's a little clearer on what you can't self-certify. So you'd have to use an authorised body or a notified body, depending on whether you're UKCA or CE marking something. There are new modules that have been adopted into the regulation as well for self-certification. The key one, if you're a machine builder or you're building something internally for your own use and you're certifying it, the key one that you're going to be looking at is Module A, assuming it's not in the annex of machines that have to be done with an authorised or notified body. So Module A is there, it's always been there. They've never been referred to as modules. That's in there in the new regulation, it is there, and there's the add-in of Module G, which talks about unit verifications and things like that. We can now, as a manufacturer, you can now send a machine with digital instructions. Okay? It always had to be that you had to print installation, operating, user, maintenance manual, all that sort of thing. You had to send those as a printed document. Now you can send them digitally. You have to be able to download them and store a local copy and print for your own use and things like that if you wish, but they can be sent as a digital copy. That also includes the declaration of conformity or incorporation if it's a part built machine. As I've said, it doesn't mention the phrase artificial intelligence, but it does infer that because it talks about machinery with fully or partially evolving behaviour, machine learning, various levels of autonomy, etc. So you need to have a look and be aware of if you're sort of developing something with that type of behaviour, you'll need to look at certain annexes within the regulations to make sure that you meet the requirements for that. This is the key part that is the major change for a lot of things now, in that it includes security. And this is from twofold. It's security for cyber access or cyber attack or anything like that and the prevention of, but also security for people and personnel being able to change modes, get into areas on a machine and that sort of thing. So there's a bit of an issue that you need to ensure with this, that you're going to have to maybe change the machinery that you've got and the way that you do it. I mentioned the EHSRs. The EHSRs is the bits within the regulation that allow us to say, yes, I comply with that and so on, and gives us that proof of compliance. But under 1.1.9, which we'll have a look at a little bit more, it talks about protection against cyber issues. Now, cyber issue might be the fact that you've got somebody with a thumb drive that's, an internal member of staff that goes down and puts something in to change a parameter or something. That thumb drive might have been infected with something from somewhere else, and he's automatically then transferring that to a machine, which could have a catastrophic effect. So the regulation, EHSR, as I said, there's a number of them. The sort of the highlighted ones are the key ones that have changed. And you'll see there, halfway down part A is 1.1.9, protection against corruption. Okay, and this is a major issue that we've got to look at in what we're doing there. So, it must be machinery designed to ensure a safe connection to other devices. So if you're plugging things in, you need to be able to do it in a safe and controlled manner. Remote communication should not lead to hazardous situations. So it may be looking at the things like the introduction of a VPN or that type of thing. Construction of machinery prevents the creation of hazardous situations during device connections. So again, if you're going in and you're modifying something, changing recipe values or machine parameters or something like that. Signal data and transmission needs to be ensured that it can't be interrupted and corrupted within the thing there. So you need to have that secure connection point between the two ends of where you're doing it. But also you need to be able to collate the information of any potential attack or anything like that that you've got within there. Okay. So it goes on with things like looking at critical software and things like that. What is required? You know, do we need to split certain things out within the machine? Hopefully, keep the separation between standard automation control and safe automation control. And we need to, wherever possible, make sure it's user friendly and it is easy to use by the people that are authorised to use it. Again, to remember that you know, modifications within that software could have serious impacts on what happens with the machine itself. So again, the recording and that sort of thing is a requirement that's there. 1.2.1 expands a little bit on that, and it talks about control systems being designed and constructed that they can withstand appropriate to circumstances and risks, intended and unintended external influences, malicious attempts from third parties. You may be aware Pilz were the victim of a cyber attack. Many people are these days. It's becoming, unfortunately, more and more common. But we need to be able to have a look at that, and again, machinery mustn't start unexpectedly, so we're not being able to dial into something and just suddenly set it off and get it something moving from a remote location or similar. Again, modifications to the settings must be prevented from hazardous situations, so you need to control, put some security around who can modify it. Safety related software can only be modified by safety competent people. You don't want anybody just being able to go in and change parameters, things like that within that. So these security standards and things that are in force already, we have a series of standards called 62443, which looks at all sorts of automation security control. And some of these have implications on what we've got within it. So, with this new obligation in the machinery regulation, that we have to consider that and look at it, which might mean that for those of you building machinery or modifying and things like that, you need to implement that to ensure that you get CE or UKCA compliance. There's a technical requirement out there, or technical report out there, should I say, 22053, that looks at trap keys. Fortress, Castell, absolutely brilliant bits of kit. Been used for years to control full body access, you know, key exchange sound systems and that sort of thing. They're anonymous. Any one of us here can walk up to a machine and pull a key out and go and put it in through a gate and go in it. That's not to say that we're all trained to be able to go into that dangerous situation or anything like that. So we need to control that from a security aspect of personnel rather than the cyber security access that we can do that. So we need some sort of identification control and things like that. Sorry, here's the sales bit. You'll be pleased to know Pilz have solutions for you, and we do have a stand out there, so when you come and talk to us in a little bit, then we can show you some of those things that will help you to do that. So there are systems available that will allow you to identify authorised personnel, to verify and authorise the people to do certain actions. It might be that they need to make a software modification. It might be that they need to enter a machine area, open a guard, change a safe mode of operation from run to setup or whatever it might be, or something like that. So there's a whole raft of things that are in there that, with things like identification keys, little RFID keys and things like that, that can be user configured, we can tick all the boxes for the requirements within this. I'm just looking at time, I'm going to have to whiz through a little bit. That was quickly through the machinery regs, security being a big thing. 13849, which is the safety rated control systems, also had a modification that's in there, and part 2, the validation bit, has now been embedded into part 1. It still has a standalone bit as part 2, but the requirements for validation and everything have been embedded into part 2. Along with a definition now in the standard that you need to have a safety requirement specification. So you need to detail what the machine's supposed to do, how it's supposed to do it, what performance requirements have you got around the systems that it's doing, and so on. How should it react during any fault conditions or anything like that? What do we need to shut down? Do we need to stop everything, or only a certain part? Can we leave certain power on to various actuators or whatever it might be? So there's a requirement there that's within that. The other thing that's changed, anybody that's familiar with looking at safety control systems will know that chart. The parameter P, the possibility of avoiding the issue, is something that's always been is it fast or slow moving and that sort of thing. It was never defined as exactly what it might be. The new version gives us a definition, gives us questions that we can ask. So we can look at the 5 different questions: use of machine, speed, spatial areas, possibility of, is it a trained personnel and things like that, and we can choose A, B or C, and there's a little chart that says if we have 1 or more C's then it's P2, or if we have whatever combination, it'll put us into 1. So we can get a bit more definitive control over the performance levels that we need to design the system to. Okay. There's also a requirement, we mentioned software is now considered as a safety component. There's also a requirement here where it talks about the 2 different types of software. So you might have a programmable safety relay or something like that. And it looks at the requirements that you have for safety related embedded software, sort of firmware of what controls the device, and the safety related application software, so the bit that you write to say, if I press an e-stop, do that, if I open a guard, do this, or whatever it might be. There's also a little bit added in for EMC and how we should route cables and things like that that's in there. 14119, I mentioned earlier about the key exchange trap key systems and things like that we have there. This gives us a bit more information and things that's in there and how we can actually use them. There are a couple of key tables in there that give us information, things like that. Table 2 has had the addition of these trap key systems put in. And table 5 looks at the measures that we can control it. So in table 2 we've got now the mechanical trap key bits that are in there. It gives us a bit more guidance and everything that we have on that. Table 5 is the one that tells us if we're using this sort of switch, what do we have to ensure that we do, or what's mandatory, what's a requirement, what's suggested. So you can see the different type of switch. So if we've got some real simple basic mechanical interlock through to a type 5 high coding where you've got full control of matched sensors and actuators and things like this, and everything that we've got about what must be a mandatory requirement for your interlock or what's recommended in the guidance that's there. Just about on time here. 14200. Anybody seen this? No. Who's involved in machine maintenance? Yeah, okay. This is not going to tell you how to maintain your machine. The manufacturer will tell you that in their maintenance instructions. Okay. What this will do is allow you to work out your maintenance policies and procedures. Okay. So it looks at various different actions, but it starts with, does a failure have an effect on safety? If it's yes, then it's a significant priority that we maintain it properly. If not, okay, yeah, all right, well, the next question is, does it have an effect on reliability? Because the key thing is, we need to keep the machine running, we've got to get the product out the door to pay the bills, okay? So again, if it's yes, then it's a significant priority for maintenance. It then goes on to talk about how we assess the maintenance requirements, and it talks about it's predicted operating life. So how long is the machine likely to be in service for? And we look at different types of approach from an optimization or reliability or indeed a safety point of view. We can look at planned maintenance. You know, is it suitable, sufficient? When is it done? How is it done? Do we need to have security control over only allowing certain people to be able to maintain it? Okay. So there's all sorts of things that's in there. But this is always going to be ever evolving. Things wear and tear, you might need to increase the maintenance frequencies and things like that. It might be that we have different maintenance tasks, things that we do on a daily, pre-roof checks and things like that we've got, or we might need to put lubrication in or something like that to something before we start it. Might be periodic, which is in addition to your daily checks and things like that. Or it might be routine annual servicing. You might have to change the bearings every 1,000 hours or whatever it might be, or something like that. Whatever you need to do is you make sure you need to record all these details and have that in a maintenance log of some sort of format. Certainly for high-risk machines. If we look at another standard which is pure, which you'll all be sort of having a requirement for, provision use of work equipment regs, it states that machines must be kept and maintained in a safe manner. Okay? If there is a maintenance log, it has to be kept up to date. And if there isn't, if it's high-risk machinery, it's recommended that you do have one. So again, scheduling maintenance tasks. How do we schedule it? When do we put them in? What do we do? Similar sort of chart to what we just looked at with, you know, severity, criticality, and then any external factors. Is it outside? We live in the north. It's a bit wet normally. This is it's abnormal weather this that we're having at the minute. It's going to rust. It's going to, that sort of thing. One of the requirements for software. Again, we mentioned software and things like that, but it states in this regulation that safety software can only be modified by proven competent persons. So are they trained and know what they're doing and where they're going? Again, security control over who does it and when does it, how they do it. No loss of communication or anything like that we've got there. And we record it. Helps at hand. Come and see us on stand 62. I'm getting the wind-up section here at the back. Right? We are there. Hopefully you know us, you know the name. We are pretty fortunate to be pretty well known in the industry for it. So thank you very much for your attention. It was a whistle-stop whiz through. I do appreciate that. Come and have a chat with us on the stand if you want a bit more information. Thanks very much for your time.